Former Marine Eduardo Lalo Paniagua served in Iraq and the 2010 troop surge in Afghanistan. Coming home after combat was a tough transition, both for him and for his wife, Donna Hernandez. Lalo had suffered physical injuries, but he came to realize there were other, less tangible wounds as well.
As a Marine, you are taught to be tough and not let small things bother you. To me, all the mental issues, the nightmares, the confusion, it was small because my life wasn't in danger. I wasn't being attacked or in an ambush, so it wasn't a problem for me. However, it was affecting my life little by little, and it was affecting my loved ones as well.
Lalo was eventually diagnosed with severe post-traumatic stress, but something else was also identified: moral injury.
Moral injuries have to do with feelings of guilt, shame, anger toward others that's moral, like resentment or indignation. And they're incurred from all sorts of things, but in war there's no shortage of occasions for these wounds to fester.
Nancy Sherman is professor of philosophy at Georgetown University and one of the nation's top scholars in the field of moral injury. In her new book, Afterwar, Sherman explores how veterans like Lalo are suffering from moral injuries. She says the entire nation has a moral duty to help them heal.
I think we have a sacred obligation to our citizen soldiers. This is not a militia. This is us. And so it's morally urgent, just as we send citizen soldiers to war, that we bring citizen soldiers home. And homecomings are really about coming home, figuring out ways to help troops integrate and transition.
Lalo and Donna were high school sweethearts. They grew up in South Central Los Angeles and say they wanted to find a way out of the barrios. For Lalo, that was the Marines.
It just drew me, the brotherhood, the camaraderie, doing something great.
His parents gave him permission to enlist when he was 17 and a half. In 2008, at the age of 19, Lalo was deployed to Iraq. When he returned, Donna was at Georgetown studying foreign affairs. Before Lalo's next tour, the two secretly eloped. Donna was 18, Lalo 20.
We just eloped, and then the next day I had to write an essay, and he had to go back to Camp Lejeune, and a couple weeks later he deployed.
On his 21st birthday, Lalo found himself on a battlefield in Afghanistan, in charge of a unit of 35 Marines, or as he called them, his baby birds. The fighting was more intense than what he had faced in Iraq. 3 of his baby birds were killed, 2 of them in IED explosions.
You never leave a fallen comrade behind. You bring your buddies home. If you're a philosopher, you say these are aspirations. But if you're a young person who has that responsibility on their shoulders, that's not how you view it. You view it as perfect duty, all or nothing.
After he returned from Afghanistan, Lalo says the memories began catching up with him.
At first, I didn't know what was happening. I was drinking every week, constantly, trying to just relax, trying to be alone. I wasn't as social as I used to be. As my wife would say, I was a social butterfly. Yeah. However, I went very internal. I'd stay, my house was my fortress of solitude.
He'd go months without smiling. He wouldn't go outside. We couldn't go watch a movie because he'd get anxiety attacks because of the dark room, because of all the people surrounding him. It really hurt because it felt like everybody else didn't know the person I knew.
Then one night, things reached a crisis point.
I tossed her halfway across the room in one of my in a nightmare, in a sleep. And when I woke up, my wife was crying on the floor, and I'm asking her what's going on, and she tells me, "You don't remember?" And I'm like, "No." She's like, "I tried to hug you, and you grabbed me, and you sent me flying halfway across the room. I've been on the floor for the last 4 hours crying." And that's when it was a wake-up call for me.
Lalo went to see a chaplain who asked if he had been to a therapist.
I was like, "No, never." Why? I'm okay. I don't need to go see the wizard. That's what we call the therapist. There was, I believe, a stigma of if you aren't right in the head, you have to go see the wizard. And if you go see the wizard, your military career is over.
After lots of convincing from Donna, Lalo began intense therapy. He got Max, a service dog specially trained to help vets with post-traumatic stress symptoms. And through Donna's Georgetown connections, he met Nancy Sherman, who helped him see that he had moral wounds.
You hold yourself strictly liable, though you're not really culpable. And you beat yourself up. and you feel the shame of falling short of your lofty military ideals.
Talking to Nancy and her using that moral injury phrase, it really makes me think. I'm like, there are things that happened, things that I feel guilty about that affect me. It's not just the flashbacks that give me nightmares, but the thoughts of feeling guilty for something that happened or for being alive. You know, it's really painful. It hurts.
Giving things a name legitimizes what you're feeling, and it also helps you to kind of explore. Oh, I'm not just thinking about these explosions or torn body parts. I'm actually thinking about my responsibility or someone else's responsibility. War is all about responsibility, and that's the moral piece.
Sherman says acknowledging those feelings as moral wounds is the first step in a very long healing process.
You never fully lose the hurt, the feel, but you own it in a way, and you don't. In the best case scenario, you don't continue to be traumatized by it.
She says another important step is for service members to regain hope in themselves and others.
To be able to have a sense of goodness about yourself, empathize with the good part of you, that's big, that's huge. And so and it often takes place not just with yourself, but interactively with other people, interpersonally.
This can begin in the family. Sherman calls Donna Lalo's angel.
She has hope in him, she has trust in him, she knows what he was like before he was rattled by war, and she slowly reminds him of what he was like so he can hold on to that faint image of his good self.
I think one of the sad parts of the story is that a lot of the time when the service members are going through these situations, their family's also going through the situation.
Sherman believes all Americans can play a role in recovery by working toward breaking down military-civilian barriers and building ongoing relationships.
Sometimes a thank you for your service just isn't enough, or it doesn't go beyond that. Be willing to slowly get to know service members.
Now honorably discharged from the Marines, this year Lalo attended Gateway Community College in New Haven, where there's a special Veterans Oasis Center which tries to help returning service members transition to a school setting. It's run by former Marine Rick Palinko.
It gives them a sense of belonging and a sense of comfort and security.
Donna has just earned her master's degree from Yale's Jackson Institute for Global Affairs and is preparing to take on an international posting with the State Department.
Now is kind of my chance to serve the U.S. now that he's been done with his service.
Wherever they end up, Lalo hopes to earn his bachelor's degree.
I want to reintegrate into society. I want to be somebody that could give back to this great nation.
And together, they want to help raise awareness among other vets and their families about the realities of moral injury and the resources available to deal with it.
You never fully recover, you never fully heal. But every day I'm healing more and more, and having her by my side, having her knowing what's going on and being so supportive, it's been great towards the healing factor.
I'm Kim Lawton in New Haven.